Rav Chossid Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bospalov, the Rov of Poltaver. He was one of the three Chassidim that the Rebbe Maharash gave them smicha for a bonus b'ksav yad kodshay. The other two were the Radatz Chain and Reb Moshe Rosenblum. The Frierdiker Rebbe once related by a Fabrengen. In the Chassidische Fabrengen, there was in honor of one of my Sheva Brachos. The Chossid Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai related that once he entered the Yechidus by the Rebbe Maharash, and he asked him certain inyonim from a Maimer Chassidus that the Rebbe said that Shabbos about the Madrega of Adam Kadmon. So the Rebbe told me to learn the Maimer of Lamnatseach al Hashminis, which is printed in the Likutei Torah, and you should ask my son, meaning the Rebbe Rashab, to give you a biur which wasn't yet printed on this Maimer. And then later in the Yechidus, the Rebbe Maharash told Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai to have a tziur muchshi in the parts of Adam Kadmon, that is like the Baal Shem Tov, that he was a person and a aliyas neshama at the same time. When Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai saw that this is a opportune time, a sha'asa kosher, by the Rebbe Maharash, so he asked, what about the Alter Rebbe? So the Rebbe Maharash answered, the Alter Rebbe in his shoyresh is the level of da'as hane'elam, but this is only in his shoyresh. But the way he was nisgale, he is moichas tima, sechel hane'ela mikol rayon. And through his Mesiras Nefesh, he was megale the seder of avodah b'derech milamata l'mayla. And he was a Rebbe. And when there is a Rebbe, there are also Chassidim. Now again, this is Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai relating by a Fabrengen, by one of the Sheva Brachos of the Frierdiker Rebbe, this Yechidus that he had many years before by the Rebbe Maharash. So at this point of the story, when Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai was telling the story, he started to cry bitterly, until all the people around by the Sheva Brachos were wondering, why is he crying so much? And they started to ask him that he shouldn't cry, but that didn't help. Until the Chossid Reb Leib Hoffman told him, now is a zman of a triple simcha. It's the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, Chayelul, and it's the day of the Isgalus of the Baal Shem Tov, and it's the simcha of the chasana of the son of the Rebbe, of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Poltaver Rov, why are you crying? Medav Tshuvaton. And Reb Leib Hoffman started to sing. Reb Leib Hoffman was a Baal Menaged Nifla, and everybody around the table helped him singing. The Radatz and the Chossid Reb Shalom Reb Hillels started to dance, and everybody else joined them. While everybody were dancing, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai was still sitting on the side, with his head leaning on his hands and crying. They poured everyone cups of l'chaim, and sometime later, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai stopped crying, and he said, the Rebbe told me then that when there is a Rebbe, there are Chassidim. But he was referring to Chassidim which accomplish and oivdim, but when the Chossid is not a Chossid, then he causes that the Rebbe should also be Ois Rebbe, should not be a Rebbe, Chas v'shalom. The Alter Rebbe was a Rebbe, and he made Chassidim. And the Chassidim, when they were Chassidim ve'anshe ma'aseh in Avodah Shebalev, they strengthened the Rebbe. They gave chizuk to the Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe once related in another Fabrengen that in the year of Tafrei Shayin Aleph, when Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bospalov stayed for a few weeks in the Ois Desha in the country with us, so he honored me a few times a week by visiting me to drink a cup of hot water by the porch under the shade of the trees. One of those visits, I reminded him what I have written in my Rishimis from a Fabrengen that happened years before in the house of the Razah, the Rebbe Rashab's brother, in the week of the celebration of my bar mitzvah, of the Frierdiker Rebbe's bar mitzvah. During that Fabrengen, there was a big vikuach, a big debate between Gdolei Chassidim about the definition of Chassidus. The people by the Fabrengen, most of them agreed that the opinion of the Chossid Reb Gershon Ber Paharer of what's the definition of Chassidus, that's the correct one. Everybody by the Fabrengen agreed that Chassidus is Chakira Elekis. But the question was, what is the advantage and what's the Chidush of Chassidus over Kabbalah and Chakira? And Rabbi Gershon Ber Paharer's opinion was that Torah Kabbalah names each sphera and parts of. Torah Chakira brought to the table Hasagas Ashlila, Ilu Yadaitiv HaYisiv. And Torah Chassidus brought to the table the concept of Hasaga Mufshetes, of being able to actually understand Yedaitiv and Hayisiv, the way it's in the Hasaga of the Nefesh HaElokis, and through Yegias Nefesh and Yegias Basar, Ba'avodah Shebalev, it could come to a complete Hasaga, and then a person could actually reach Yedaitiv and Hayisiv. Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bespalov explained at length the opinion and explanation of Reb Gershom Ber Paharer, and then he said, such excellent Baal Kishroin with such amkus, which 6 hours of being misamek in a Maimer Haskala for him are like nothing, tens of years he toiled be'egias basar ve'nefesh amitis, crowned with the brachos of the Rebbeim. So by him, by Reb Gershom Ber Paharer, these 2 things of Yedaitiv and Hayisim were there by him in complete and in a way of Gadlus HaMeichen. As we were talking, meaning the Frierdiker Rebbe and Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bespalov by the porch, under the shade of the trees, says the Frierdiker Rebbe that the Rebbe Rashab came and he sat down with us and he asked us, what are we talking about? So Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai told the Rebbe Rashab that we spoke today about the Maila of Avodah Shebalev, to daven not only with the heart and with tears, rather also with the heart and with Chassidus. And I reminded him that conversation, meaning Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai was saying to the Rebbe Rashab that the Frierdiker Rebbe reminded him of that conversation that they had by the Farbrengen in the Razah's house in the week of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah about what's the definition of Chassidus. And Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai related to the Rebbe Rashab the opinion of Reb Gershom Ber about the definition of what's Chassidus. And he said that in my opinion, that explanation of Reb Gershom Ber Paharer are only for Baal Madrega with a Kishara and an Askola and Avodah like of Chassidim like Reb Gershom Ber Paharer. But for people like us, referring to himself, that's something else. We can't reach that. So the Rebbe Rashab answered, no, it's not so. Each one from Anash, which is Oisek Belimud Chassidus and Avodah Shebalev, could feel the Hayisiv which comes for the Yedaitiv of his neshama. The father of Yaakov Mordechai Poltaver was a wealthy man, and even though he was a Chossid, he wasn't very happy from the fact that his son, Yaakov Mordechai, was completely devoted to Torah and Avodah. One time he came to the Rebbe Maharash, and he asked in a complaining tone of voice, what's going to end up being with my son? Was it decreed upon him to be a Batlan? So the Rebbe Maharash told him, don't worry. As Hashem, he will be a Rov in a big city, and he's going to get a weekly salary of 20 ruble, 25 ruble, and even more. And this is what happened. When Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai was hired to be a Rav in Poltava, first they set for him a weekly salary of 20 ruble, which was a large amount of those days. Later they raised his salary to 25 ruble, and the third time they raised it to 30 ruble. Reb Mendel Futefas once said, the Rebbe Maharash had a few Chassidim that were on the level of a Beinani. And one of them was Bebechinas Baal Tshuva, and that was the Chossid Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bespalov. The Chassidim said about him, and about the Chossid Reb David Tzvi Chaim, known as the Radatz, that both of them were Bebechinas Beinani HaMispalol Kol Hayom Kuloi. One of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Farbrengens, one of the Chassidim asked him, what's the difference between Yaakov Motel and David Hirsch? Meaning, what's the difference between Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Bespalov and the Radatz Chaim? So the Frierdiker Rebbe answered, by Reb David Hirsch, by the Radatz, the Avodah is Azoi. And the Frierdiker Rebbe took both of his thumbs and he made a tnuah of Milamayla Lemata. However, by Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai, the Avodah is Azoi. And the Frierdiker Rebbe went with his thumbs in a tnuah of Milamata Lamayla. The Oivdim who were present at the Farbrengen, says Reb Mendel, understood right away what the Frierdiker Rebbe was referring to. Both of them, the Radatz and Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai, were equally high in their Avodas Atfilah, and both of them davened very long. However, the difference was the Hachana Latfilah of Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai took 5 hours, and the actual davening took 5 hours. He would wake up every night by midnight and prepare himself for 5 hours until 5 in the morning. 5 in the morning he will start davening until 10 o'clock in the morning, meaning he managed to finish Shachris Bizmana. The Radatz, however, would get up and start preparing for davening 5 in the morning, prepare till 10 in the morning, and only then start davening. So he did not finish Tfilah Bizmano. Chassidim also say that at a certain point, the Rebbe Maharash told the Radatz, you have to start thinking already about the Avodah of Tzadikim. The Frierdiker Rebbe once related by a Farbrengen that Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai of Poltaver, when he used to explain a in Chassidus, he used to explain it. And when he didn't have any more oisiyos to explain, he used to say, Azoi is their inyan. The Rebbe Rashab once related, once I entered my father, the Rebbe Maharash, for Yechidus. My father, the Rebbe Maharash, spoke about the 3 levels of Sfas Emes, Emes, and Emes La'amitoi. The first 2 levels of Sfas Emes and Emes, I managed to understand after toiling a lot. However, the 3rd level of Emes La'amitoi, I worked really hard, but that didn't help. That bothered me very much, and I decided to enter to Yechidus again by my father, the Rebbe Maharash, and ask him about it. In the evening hours, it seems from the story that in the evening hours means before he managed to go into Yechidus. So in the evening hours, the Chossid of Yaakov Mordechai entered my room, and I saw that he's very emotional. And he told me that he was today at Yechidus, and he told the Rebbe that he doesn't want to learn and be oisek in Avodah because he doesn't understand. And he said that the Rebbe Maharash told him, why are you demanding from me? Demand from yourself. And when you will demand from yourself, you will start understanding. Says the Rebbe Rashab, when I heard that from Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai, what he heard from my father, that if you demand from yourself, you start understanding, that encouraged me to work even harder to understand the inyan of Emes La'amitoi. And after Yigiyah Rabbah, the Eibishter granted me with a Matana Toiva, and I understood the inyan. This last story that we just said, the Rebbe Rashab related in the Purim Farbrengen of Tov Reish Samach Gimel, in the presence of Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai. 9 years later, in the Farbrengen of Purim Tov Reish Ayin Beis, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Poltaver was also there. The Rebbe Rashab mentioned again the story, and he added, this answer of my father that you shared with me helped me throughout all the tkufas of my life in the deepest inyanim. Until today, thank the Eibishter, there wasn't any inyan in Teres Chassidus that I wasn't able to understand fully, even though for sure there were times that I needed tremendous yagiyah. And then the Rebbe Rashab started to tell about the tkufa when him and the Chossid of Yaakov Mordechai used to learn Chassidus v'chavrusa, chazer the ma'amarim of the Rebbe Maharash, write hanachos, and speak for hours about inyonei avodah and askala. And as the Rebbe Rashab is relating all of these memories, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai burst out crying. It was a Chassidish crying, which in his crying you were able to feel the Chassidish expression of Yismarmer ve'yivke v'mar nafshay. A cry of merirus nafshis. A cry, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, that stays engraved in a heart for eternity. It was very hard to calm him down, and when he calmed down a little bit, that's when a real Chassidish Farbrengen started, where the Rebbe Rashab explained that the Seichel of Torah Chassidus is a Seichel Eleki, and it's a Seichel that could be miskabel. And the Ikar Avodah is turning the person into a Kli Kabbalah for the Seichel Eleki of Chassidus. In that same Farbrengen, Purim, Tov Reish Ayin Beis, later on they started to sing. So when they started to sing, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai, which was a kapdan by nature, made a motion with his hand of saying like, no, don't sing that niggin. It's a chazonish niggin. Sing a chsidish niggin. So the Rebbe Rashab turned to Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai and he said, do you remember what my father, the Rebbe Maharash, said about this? So Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai said, no, I don't remember. So the Rebbe Rashab related that once by a Farbrengen, my father said that there are 3 types of nigunim. There is a chazonish niggin, there is a davening niggin, and a chsidish niggin. We're not talking now about the chsidish niggin, says the Rebbe Rashab. It's known that in the Besmedrash of the Maharal in Prague, the pillars that were supporting the ceiling were filled with the tfilos of the chazonim that didn't manage to go up l'mayla to Shemayim. And they need rachamim gedolim in order for a niggin, a chazonish niggin, to go up l'mayla. Here the Rebbe Rashab paused for a little bit. He was deep in thought, and then he said, here we need to skip the story a little bit. And then he said, the difference between a davening niggin and a chsidish niggin is that a davening niggin is a niggin that comes from the kavana, but a chsidish niggin creates the kavana. When Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai heard everything that the Rebbe Rashab related, he started to tear up again, and he said, how could I forget the words of the Rebbe Maharash? At that time, years before, when the Rebbe Maharash said this, the difference between the 3 types of nigunim, it caused me to go into Yechidus. The Rebbe once related that the Frierdiker Rebbe once told him that once, when Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Poltaver was sitting with the Rebbe Rashab, after they were friends already for 30 years, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai burst out crying, and he said to the Rebbe Rashab, for the last 30 years, you kept going up, Lamaila Maila, and I went down, Lamata Mata. And the mashmos of the story was that the Rebbe Rashab accepted it, meaning he agreed with it. Taka, that he went Lamaila Maila and he went Lamata Mata. Think about it, says the Rebbe. Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai was a Baal Darga, a Baal Tzura, a Oived, and his Avodah was Bekava Merirus. And after all of that, compared to the Aliyah of the Rebbe Rashab, not only did the Avodah of Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai wasn't even Begeder Aliyah, compared to the Avodah of the Rebbe Rashab was the Inyan of going down Lamata. Rabbi Yisrael Jacobson once related that once when he went into Yechidus to the Rafidike Rebbe told him that once my father, the Rebbe Rashab, said to Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Poltaver, "Her du, listen you." And at that time he called him du as opposed to the title that he would usually call him, which is Ir, which is the more respectful title. But at that time the Rebbe Rashab told him, "Du, her du. You say that I am like a bird that flies up to the top of the tree, and you are like the calf that stays standing under the tree. However, we're brothers. You should know that just like a Chossid is not allowed to forget his own chesreinos, at the same measurement a person is not allowed to forget his own milas, and he has to guard them, and he should not want that they should go away." Fidik Rebbe once related, in the year of Tov Reish Mem Daled, when I was a little kid, 4 years old, my father lived then at a house that had 2 rooms. One room was the bedroom, and the second room, my father sat and learned with the Chossid of Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai Poltaver. That room was also the little bed where I slept. They say that I was a Yefet Toyar and my face shined. During the limud, in a late night hour, Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai looked at me while I was sleeping, and he said to my father that the look and the shine of my face show an tahara samachshava. My father had a yisodidus and a desire to give me a kiss. And then he thought in his head that in the Beis HaMikdash, besides for korbanos, they also brought silver, gold for bedek habayis. So my father decided to exchange the kiss with a Maimer Chassidus, and he wrote the Maimer Dibur Amaschel Mo Rabu Ma'asecha. And years later, in the year of Tov Reish Nun Beis, he gave me the ksav of the Maimer as a present, and he said, "This is a Chassidish Kush." And eventually I will tell you the story. In the year of Tov Reish Nun Vav, he told me the whole story. Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai passed away at Lamed Tishrei Tov Reish Ayin Vav. Chassidim say that before he passed away, he said, "I did not sleep on a bed for 30 years. But I regret it. Because if I would sleep on a bed for 30 years, for the last 30 years, I will be able to live maybe one more day. And I will be able to put on tefillin one more day. One more day of putting on tefillin is more precious than 30 years not sleeping on a bed." Chassidim will conclude by saying that to come to such a derher and feeling about the mitzvah of tefillin, for that you actually have to not sleep on a bed for 30 years. Rabbi Yaakov Mordechai had a niggin that used to daven with b'ne'imo udveikus, filled with regesh. Rabbi Moshe Yehuda Reichman, which was a mashpia for many years in the yeshiva Teras Emes in Eretz Yisrael, related that he heard from his father-in-law, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Havlin, a mashpia in the Rosh Yeshiva of Teras Emes, the following story. The Rebbe Maharash had a Chossid, which was referred to as the Ilui from Poltaver. He was known as a great maskil, and eventually, unfortunately, he went off the derech and he started to read Sfarim Chitzoniim, and until he became a comedian, and he had comedy shows in Petersburg. One time, his managers in Petersburg asked him to act how a Yid says Krishma Shalamita, and they gave him a few days to practice. During those few days, he was practicing saying Krishma Shalamita, and he was getting so into it until he had a big yisodidus. And when it came the moment for him to go up to the stage to present, to act, he was in a tremendous yisodidus, and he read Krishma Shalamita Azoy Emes Chossid, which obviously is something that the managers of the show didn't really like so much, and they kicked him off the stage, and he traveled back to Lubavitch, and he became a Baal Tshuva. When he came back to Lubavitch, he composed this niggin. We'll play this niggin the way it is in the Choyach record, sung by Harav Chossid Reb Zalman Bronstein from Kfar Chabad.
Oh, Yeah.